Jonathan Carter stepped off the train, his eyes fixed on the distant mansion rising above the fog. His chest tightened as the cool evening air wrapped around him like a warning. The Winchester Mystery House loomed against the horizon, its many towers crooked like a puzzle that should never have been solved. Jonathan whispered to himself, "This is it. The place where truth hides in shadows." And as he adjusted his worn satchel, the sound of the wind echoed like faint whispers calling his name. Every step toward the mansion made his pulse quicken, yet he could not turn away. He recalled the rumors of staircases that led nowhere, and doors that opened to walls, and a chill ran down his spine. A single thought burned inside him. I will find the answers within these walls, no matter the cost. The heavy wooden door closed behind Jonathan Carter with a thud, sealing him inside the mansion's labyrinth. The hallway ahead was narrow, its walls decorated with faded wallpaper that seemed to breathe under the dim light. Jonathan whispered, "This place feels alive." His footsteps echoed too loudly, as though the walls were listening. He counted the doors he passed, each one slightly ajar, each leading into unsettling darkness. A sudden draft pushed against him, and the flame of his lantern wavered dangerously. Jonathan steadied it with a clenched hand, his jaw tight, his determination unbroken. He pressed forward, deeper into the house that already felt like it was closing around him. Jonathan pushed open a creaking door and entered a small chamber cluttered with scattered blueprints. Dust swirled in the stale air. A wooden table in the center was covered with ink-stained journals and drawings of staircases spiraling into nothing. He ran his fingers along the parchment, muttering, "Sarah Winchester drew these." The handwriting felt oddly familiar, sharp strokes filled with urgency. One sketch showed a door opening into a wall, another, a hallway that ended in bricks. His breath quickened as realization set in. The house was built like a maze, but not just for the living, it was designed for the dead. The floorboards groaned under Jonathan's weight, sending a shiver through him. A whisper carried from the shadows, soft but sharp enough to pierce his resolve. "Leave this place, while you still can." Jonathan froze, gripping his lantern tighter. The words seemed to echo from the walls themselves. His breath fogged in the air, though the room was not cold. He whispered, "Who's there?" His voice cracked, and the silence that followed was heavier than any response. The house seemed to shift around him, as though alive and watching. Fear tugged at his mind, but curiosity burned stronger. A figure stepped from the doorway, startling Jonathan. It was Eleanor Price, her eyes guarded yet her stance resolute. She said, "I warned you not to come, but you didn't listen." Jonathan steadied his lantern, his voice firm, "And you knew I would come anyway." Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line as she lowered her gaze. "If you're determined, I'll help you, but understand the secrets here are dangerous, and the keeper will know you're inside." Jonathan's heart pounded, but he nodded, ready to face what lay ahead. Jonathan Carter and Eleanor Price moved deeper into the house, their lantern light trembling against walls marked with strange carvings. The silence was broken only by the creaking of old wood, each sound carrying like a warning. Jonathan muttered, "These symbols repeat, almost like a code." Eleanor leaned closer, brushing dust from the wall, and whispered, "They're protective marks, meant to keep something trapped." Jonathan's breath caught, the weight of the mansion pressing down on him. The air grew heavy, as though unseen eyes followed them with every step. He knew the house was more than an architectural oddity. It was alive, and it was watching. They entered a cramped study, lined with dusty shelves and journals. Eleanor opened a brittle leather-bound book, the ink faded but legible. She said, "Look at this. It says the house was built as a barrier." Jonathan frowned, his eyes racing across the text. A barrier against what? The words were fragmented but urgent. The walls contained them. Jonathan's pulse quickened. He whispered, "She believes spirits would follow her, and she tried to trap them here." Eleanor's hand trembled as she closed the book. "If that's true, then we're not just exploring a house. We're inside a prison for the dead." A narrow door opened into a chamber lined with tall mirrors. Jonathan stepped inside, his reflection stretching and bending unnaturally. His voice echoed, "The mirrors distort reality." Eleanor stood rigid, watching her own reflection splinter into dozens of versions, each with expressions slightly off, as though the glass was alive. She whispered, "It's showing us what we fear." Jonathan clenched his fists, as one reflection smiled back at him when he did not. The silence deepened, the air charged. The mansion wasn't just a trap, it was a vessel, twisting truth until it broke those inside. The air shifted suddenly, thick and suffocating. The lantern flame bent sideways, though no wind stirred. A voice drifted from the dark low and commanding, "You're too close. Leave." Jonathan's grip tightened on the lantern, his jaw set. "I won't stop." Eleanor's face paled, her voice barely audible. "Jonathan, the keeper knows you're here." The temperature dropped, their breaths now visible as white mist. The hallway groaned, wood bending under invisible weight. Every instinct told them to flee, yet Jonathan stepped forward, defiance burning in his eyes. Something wanted them gone, but he would not be turned back. Jonathan pressed Eleanor for answers, his voice urgent. "You've seen him before, haven't you? The keeper of secrets." Eleanor lowered her gaze, fear tightening her voice. "He moves in shadows, he manipulates, he ensures the truth never sees light." Jonathan's heart pounded, but he forced calm. "Then we find him, and we take back the truth." Eleanor shook her head. "You don't understand. He doesn't just guard secrets, he owns them." A distant slam echoed, the sound of a door locking somewhere deeper. The house was aware, and so was the keeper. Their time was running short. Jonathan Carter and Eleanor Price moved into a circular chamber where the air felt heavier than stone. Their lantern flickered, casting fractured light across stained glass windows that depicted cryptic scenes of death and rebirth. Jonathan whispered, "These aren't decorations, they're warnings." Eleanor tightened her coat around her, her eyes scanning the shifting shadows. A sudden voice, calm yet piercing, echoed from nowhere. "You dig too deep, Jonathan. The house does not welcome thieves of truth." Jonathan's breath caught as his heart thundered. He turned slowly, but no one stood there. Eleanor muttered, "He's here, the keeper." The chamber door slammed shut, the sound echoing like a final verdict. Jonathan raised his voice, steady but sharp. "Show yourself." The keeper's reply was measured, dripping with contempt. "Curiosity is a disease, and you are its latest victim." Eleanor stepped closer to Jonathan, her voice shaking. "He won't appear fully. He doesn't need to." Jonathan clenched his fists, forcing courage into words. "If you guard secrets, then you know I won't leave until I've uncovered them." The silence that followed felt alive, pressing against their lungs, until the glass rattled violently without breaking. The keeper's voice circled them like smoke. "Sarah built this place not to protect herself, but to protect the world from what she unleashed." Jonathan's heart lurched. "Unleashed?" Eleanor shook her head quickly, whispering, "Don't listen, he twists truth into chains." Jonathan's determination burned brighter. Even lies contain fragments of truth. Suddenly, a gust of unseen force extinguished the lantern, plunging them into near darkness. Only the faint glow of the stained glass kept them from drowning in shadows. Jonathan steadied his breath. Fear would not win. The stained glass pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat, bathing the chamber in shifting red and blue. The keeper's words grew sharper. "You cannot free what is bound here. The house itself is the cage." Jonathan shouted back, his voice echoing, "Then cages can break." Eleanor grabbed his arm, her voice urgent. "He wants you to push too far. That's how he wins." The floor beneath them trembled as cracks split along the boards. Dust rained from above, and the weight of the mansion groaned like a beast waking from slumber. Jonathan's jaw set. He would not be silenced. The tremors ceased as suddenly as they began, leaving suffocating silence. Then the keeper's voice softened, almost gentle. Truth is not salvation, Jonathan. It is ruin. Walk away, and the house will forget you. Jonathan inhaled slowly, his voice low but resolute. I'd rather be broken by truth than protected by lies. Eleanor's eyes filled with dread as she whispered, Then he'll come for us both. A faint laugh echoed, fading into the walls. The mansion grew still, but the threat lingered, heavy as a curse. They had drawn the keeper's full attention, and there was no turning back. Jonathan Carter and Eleanor Price pushed through a warped corridor that spiraled upward, only to find themselves in a dead-end chamber. The silence was broken by the sound of slow clapping. A man stepped forward from the shadows, tall and composed. His name was Victor Harland, an historian who had once claimed to study the house. Jonathan's brow furrowed, suspicion clouding his features. Victor smiled faintly, his voice smooth. You've come far, Jonathan. Let me guide you the rest of the way. Eleanor whispered sharply, Don't trust him. But Jonathan hesitated, torn between doubt and the desperate need for answers. Victor moved closer, his steps measured and deliberate. Sarah Winchester was not mad, he said with conviction. She built this place as a map, a guide for those who dare to see beyond the veil. Jonathan's eyes widened, curiosity flaring, though he masked it with caution. And why would you help us? Victor's smile grew thinner. Because truth belongs to those who are brave enough to claim it. Eleanor crossed her arms tightly, her voice edged with suspicion. Or to those who twist it. Victor's eyes lingered on her, his expression unreadable, but he did not answer. Victor led them into a vast hall filled with unfinished staircases climbing into ceilings, and doors suspended high above the floor. Jonathan whispered in awe, She built chaos into order. Victor's voice was calm, almost soothing. Every path leads to revelation if you choose wisely. Eleanor muttered under her breath, And if we don't? Victor's eyes flashed with something sharp, quickly masked by another smile. Then the house swallows you whole. Jonathan studied him carefully, wondering if the man was a guide or a predator. The house groaned, as though reacting to their words. They paused near a staircase that climbed to nowhere. Victor placed his hand on the railing, his tone soft. Sarah feared the keeper, but she also feared what truth might unleash. Jonathan frowned, his voice sharp. You speak as if you knew her. Victor's gaze lingered on him before he replied, In ways I did. Her secrets are my inheritance. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Inheritance? That's not study, that's possession. Jonathan felt the tension coil tighter in his chest. Victor's words were too polished, too rehearsed. A shadow of doubt darkened Jonathan's trust, but the hunger for truth still gnawed at him. A gust of wind slammed a door somewhere above, echoing like a gunshot. Victor did not flinch. Instead, he stepped closer to Jonathan, lowering his voice. You can't win without me. The keeper fears me because I know the house better than he does. Jonathan's pulse quickened as doubt and desperation battled inside him. Eleanor whispered fiercely, He's lying, Jonathan. He wants control, not truth. Victor's smile sharpened, his eyes gleaming with quiet menace. Control and truth are not so different. The house groaned, its walls vibrating, as if confirming the deceit that lingered between them. Jonathan Carter and Eleanor Price followed Victor Harland into a chamber where dust drifted like ash in the lantern glow. At the center sat a fragile woman in a faded Victorian gown, her hands folded in her lap. Her name was Margaret Hale, a relative of Sarah Winchester, her face pale and sorrowful. Eleanor whispered, She's alive. Margaret's voice trembled, alive, but never free. Jonathan's heart clenched as he realized she was bound not by chains, but by grief. Margaret looked up at him with haunted eyes. The house remembers me. It will never let me go. Margaret's frail hands shook as she gestured toward the cracked ceiling. Sarah thought she could outbuild death, but every room she built only gave it more doors to enter. Jonathan leaned forward, voice urgent. You knew her secrets. Why did she build it this way? Margaret's gaze grew distant. She believed the spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles would haunt her until she gave them a place to wander. Eleanor stepped closer, her voice trembling. "And what happened to you?" Margaret's lips quivered. "I stayed too long. The house took my life, piece by piece." Margaret's voice dropped lower, heavy with grief. "The keeper came to me once, promising freedom if I betrayed Sarah's plans. But I refused, and now I am trapped between worlds." Jonathan's pulse raced as he asked, "What did he want?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "He wanted the map she carried in her mind, the blueprints that bind the dead." Eleanor whispered urgently, "Jonathan, this is proof. The keeper fears the design." Jonathan clenched his jaw, realization sinking in. The house wasn't random. It was a weapon built with intent. Margaret's sorrow deepened. And weapons always draw blood. The walls groaned, shaking dust loose, as if the house recoiled from Margaret's confession. She cried out, "It knows I've spoken too much." Jonathan steadied her shoulders. "We'll protect you." Eleanor pulled Jonathan back sharply. "No one is safe if the house decides otherwise." Margaret's voice rose, desperate. "You cannot fight it with strength. Only truth can break its chains." A sharp crack split the floorboards, blackness yawning beneath. Jonathan pulled Margaret back just in time. The message was clear. The house was punishing them for unveiling its past. When the tremors ceased, Margaret collapsed back into her chair, her voice reduced to a whisper. "Tell the world. Sarah was not cursed. She was protecting you." Jonathan's throat tightened, his eyes burning with determination. Eleanor knelt beside Margaret, tears brimming. "We'll carry your truth forward." Margaret smiled faintly, then closed her eyes. Her body slumped, but her face held peace, as though freed at last. Jonathan whispered fiercely, "Her sacrifice won't be forgotten." The house creaked, but for the first time, it felt less like anger and more like mourning. Jonathan Carter and Eleanor Price descended a spiral staircase that seemed endless, their lantern glow barely holding back the dark. Behind them, Victor Harland followed closely, his steps too quiet. Jonathan whispered, "Something feels wrong." Eleanor tightened her grip on the railing, her eyes darting nervously. Suddenly, the staircase ended in a locked iron gate. Victor's voice echoed coldly, "The path you seek is not for you." Jonathan spun to face him, fury in his eyes. Eleanor gasped, realization dawning too late. Victor's calm smile revealed the truth. He had never been their ally. Victor stepped forward, his voice steady, almost soothing. "The Keeper and I are not enemies, Jonathan. We serve the same truth. You were only meant to lead me to what I could not find alone." Jonathan's chest tightened with rage. "You've been deceiving us this whole time." Eleanor's voice cracked, her betrayal raw. "We trusted you." Victor's eyes hardened. "Trust is the illusion that blinds seekers. I am the key, and you are merely the lock." The house seemed to hum in approval, its walls vibrating faintly as if siding with Victor's words. Jonathan's hand trembled as he lifted his lantern, casting Victor's face in fractured light. "Why betray us? Why betray Margaret's truth?" Victor's smile widened, sharp as a blade. "Because truth is power, and power belongs to those who dare to wield it. Margaret wasted her life clinging to sorrow. I will not." Eleanor stepped between them, her voice fierce. "You're feeding the Keeper, not defying him." Victor leaned closer, his whisper venomous. "Perhaps, but at least I will survive." Jonathan's fury burned, but the betrayal cut deeper than any blade. The ground shook as Victor slammed his hand against the iron gate. With a groan, it unlocked, swinging open to reveal a corridor, glowing faintly with blue light. He turned back, voice echoing with authority. "This is where Sarah hid her final secret, and you've brought me to it." Jonathan lunged forward, fury driving him, but the floorboards cracked beneath his boots, holding him back. Eleanor pulled him up, her voice desperate. "He's used us, Jonathan. If he finds that secret, the Keeper wins." Victor only laughed, stepping into the blue-lit corridor, his figure swallowed by light. Jonathan's heart pounded as the iron gate slammed shut between them and Victor. His lantern shook in his grasp, the flame bending wildly. Eleanor whispered, voice breaking, "He betrayed us, and now he holds the key." Jonathan pressed his forehead to the bars, rage and despair boiling inside. He thinks betrayal will shield him, but it will destroy him. The house creaked around them, the sound like a mocking laugh. Jonathan turned to Eleanor, determination burning through the grief. "We're not finished. He's taken the path, but we'll take the truth." Jonathan Carter and Eleanor Price forced open a warped door, stepping into a massive chamber beneath the house. The air shimmered with cold, and walls pulsed faintly with an unnatural glow. At the far end stood Victor Harland, his posture proud, holding a torn blueprint. The keeper's presence loomed unseen, his voice whispering through the stone. "At last, the truth." Eleanor grabbed Jonathan's arm, whispering urgently, "He's feeding it what it wants." Jonathan's jaw clenched as he shouted, "Victor, stop, you don't understand what you've unleashed." Victor only smiled, the blueprint glowing faintly in his hands. The keeper's voice thundered, shaking dust from the beams. "The cage was never to protect Sarah. It was to contain me." Jonathan's breath quickened as realization struck. "She built the house to trap you." Eleanor's voice shook, and now Victor is breaking it apart. Victor laughed, his tone triumphant. "I am not destroying her work. I am completing it. Power like this should not rot behind walls." The chamber rumbled, cracks spiderwebbing across the ceiling. Jonathan stepped forward, defiance in his voice. "You're blinded by ambition. This will consume you before it frees you." The keeper's shadow stretched across the chamber, coalescing into a towering figure cloaked in darkness. His voice rumbled low. "The betrayer has done his work. Now, the cage breaks." Jonathan's eyes burned with resolve. "No, Sarah left another truth. She built this house to hold you, but also to remind us that secrets cannot be controlled." Eleanor lifted a lantern, her voice firm. "The truth doesn't belong to him, it belongs to everyone." The keeper recoiled at the light, shadows writhing in agony. Victor's confident smile faltered as the blueprint dimmed in his grasp. Victor screamed, tearing the blueprint in half, but instead of freeing him, the keeper's shadows turned upon him. His voice echoed with panic. "No, I am your ally." The shadows wrapped around his form, dragging him into the dark. Jonathan reached for him instinctively, but Eleanor pulled him back. He chose betrayal. Let the house claim him. Victor's cries faded as silence returned, leaving only the keeper, weakened by the light. Jonathan stepped forward, voice steady. "It ends tonight." He raised the lantern higher, the golden glow searing through the chamber. The lantern's flames surged, its glow brighter than fire. Shadows recoiled, the keeper's form unraveling into dust. His final whisper echoed, "Truth is a curse." The chamber stilled, silence heavy. Eleanor leaned against Jonathan, tears in her eyes. "We survived, but at what cost?" Jonathan gazed at the house around them, its walls groaning as if exhaling relief. "Sarah built this house for redemption, not fear. Now it holds peace." They turned together, leaving the chamber. The Winchester Mystery House remained, not as a prison, but as a monument to sacrifice, truth, and the cost of secrets.